Action News reporter Matt Cota is still live on the scene with the very latest. Matt.
Well, Jennifer, I'm at the Milpas Street roundabout, and behind my right shoulder you can see a twisted mass of metal that used to be a tractor-trailer truck. On the way to Lompoc, carrying a trailer full of mattresses, this semi-tractor trailer truck swerved off the highway.
You can see the trailer is suspended above the number 2 and number 1 lanes for Milpas.
While the trailer teetered over the railing, the front end of the truck landed about 30 feet below.
The sound was really scary. I mean, there was people coming down from the top of Haley Street thinking it was an earthquake.
With diesel fuel pouring out of the gas tank, 2 clerks working at the nearby Rite Aid were the first on the scene. Jose Gonzalez describes what he saw.
It was kind of scary, to tell the truth. There's diesel everywhere and smoke.
Watching the 2 gentlemen from Rite Aid just run out there and not even be afraid of the truck blowing up or anything, because it was pretty horrific.
When they got to the truck, they found the driver. He was okay, stunned but alert. Jose helped him out of the cab.
He was banging on my window, and he asked me, "Can you get out?" I said yes, but I had a heck of a time unbuckling my seatbelt. Finally, I broke it loose, and I got to the door and unlocked it, and he helped me get out. I don't know where he went to, though.
Well, actually, he went back to work, stocking the shelves at Rite Aid. While the truck driver calls Jose a hero, Jose doesn't agree.
No. Just doing, my part. Hopefully somebody will do that for me one day.
Now, after it was determined that no one was hurt, the biggest concern was all that diesel fuel. There were 2 50-gallon tanks on that 18-wheeler truck, and some of that diesel fuel escaped down the storm drain, and we'll have much more on that part of the story tonight on Action News at 6. For now, back to you in the studio, Jennifer.
Quite a mess. Thank you, Matt.
Tony, the storm that caused some hazardous driving conditions today was welcomed by surfers, but many got more than they bargained for. Lured by the big waves, Camille, Laura, and dozens of other surfers ignored the storm and ventured out into the ocean. Why'd you go out?
Because they're big. Big, and I don't know, I get a rush out of it.
But Camille got out when things got too dangerous. Several others stayed behind at their own peril. Trapped by the cliffs and the rising tide, 2 men struggling in the surf were spotted by several people back on shore. They immediately called the county's water rescue team.
Unfortunately, the weather's so bad out there and the kelp is so thick, it slowed the wave runners down.
With the wave runners still several minutes away, the surfers were battered by the pounding waves.
Waves actually got bigger and started to hammer them even harder on the cliffs, so time was of the essence.
From the deck of a nearby apartment building, the rescue team quickly set up a rope rescue system. With dozens of firefighters pulling, the surfers were raised inch by inch out of harm's way.
It's pretty mad out there.
The rescued surfers, Colby Graham and Danny Proctor, had nothing but praise for the firefighters that lifted them back onto solid ground.
The guy here brought me up. He saved my board even.
Ironically, the same kelp that slowed down the rescue wave runners kept the surfers safe on the rocks.
Thank God for that pile of seaweed.
It was the only thing we could dig our feet into. We weren't sliding on the rocks.
As a result, both Danny and Colby suffered only minor cuts and bruises, and say they'll be back out riding the waves once the surf calms down. Now you see those 2 guys together, they look like old friends. Actually, they met for the first time this morning when they both happened to get stuck on that rock together. I guess when you're stranded with a stranger in such a precarious position for so long, you can't help but become better acquainted.
Action News reporter Matt Cota live with more. Matt.
Well, Jennifer, in the words of one firefighter, a major catastrophe was avoided here in Santa Barbara today after a fire erupts dangerously close to the 2 large propane tanks behind me. Firefighters douse a utility truck while flaming propane tanks lay scattered in an industrial area near Highway 101.
The truck had a number of smaller propane tanks in the back, and when we arrived, a number of them were laying on the ground and the entire vehicle was engulfed in flames.
While putting out the flames, firefighters became aware of a potentially bigger problem, that the fire could spread to the larger propane tanks.
This particular situation is about as dangerous as you can get if you run across it.
Battalion Chief John Allman says the liquefied propane is highly combustible. Fearing that the larger tanks would explode, water was used to cool them down. Meanwhile, Santa Barbara police officers evacuated dozens of people from the area and closed down several blocks. Now, Ralph Cardenas, the owner of the propane business, suffered first-degree burns to his face, his neck, and his shoulders. He is recovering tonight at Santa Barbara's Cottage Hospital. As for what started the fire, that is still under investigation. For now, back to you in the studio, Jennifer.
Operation is discovered near Santa Ynez today. For more on that, we go live to Action News reporter Matt Cota. Matt.
Well, Tony, this is one of the largest marijuana busts in Santa Barbara County history. Over 25,000 pot plants were discovered, all within a mile of Highway 154. From From the air, narcotics detectives scour the rugged landscape of the Los Padres National Forest, looking for a slight change in the color of vegetation below.
Once you get up there and you know what you're looking for, you can see it right away.
Today, that reconnaissance paid off as sheriff detectives and the California Department of Justice cut and collect an illegal marijuana grow.
This is a very large scale in the thousands of plants.
Sonia Barno with the California Department of Justice says today's bust will take millions of dollars worth of pot off the streets. But finding those responsible is another matter.
The chances of police detection and arrest are minimal for them.
While the growers left plenty of evidence behind.
Insect repellent, a lot of canned food.
This sophisticated operation with its own irrigation system was probably financed by the Mexican drug cartel.
It's no longer the hippies and the small-time growers.
The California Department of Justice began its marijuana eradication campaign 2 days ago. Already, over 20,000 plants have been seized. Public lands like the National Forest are fertile ground for illegal marijuana growing operations, which should be a concern to anyone who hikes into the National Forest and happens to stumble upon something like this.
This is money. It comes down to money. And they're going to do what it takes to protect their plants.
There are millions of acres of National Forest land in the state of California. With 8 weeks left before marijuana is harvested, there is still a tremendous amount of ground to cover.
I think we're going to be very busy.
According to narcotics detectives, the street value of the marijuana seized today, $37 million. For now, back to you in the studio, Tony.
Wow, just amazing. Thanks. For those who walk, Action News reporter Matt Cota is live with more. Matt?
Tony, we're here live on Cabrillo Boulevard, where you can see cars don't always stop for pedestrians trying to cross this busy 4-lane road. The problem is people are getting hurt, and that's why the Santa Barbara Police Department is launching a special sting operation. As cars cruise Cabrillo Boulevard during the busy lunch hour, cautious pedestrians know just how dangerous it is to get from one side of the street to the other.
I almost got hit on my bike coming over here.
They won't stop for you. They'll just try to go around you when you're in the middle of the street.
The fact is that drivers aren't giving the right of way to pedestrians when they really should.
George Girth with Santa Barbara's Public Works Department knows all about the problem. Last year, there were 74 traffic accidents involving pedestrians, 7 deaths, and 70 injuries.
Obviously concerned with the number of collisions that we have, and we're trying to reduce the collision rate.
The aim of a new enforcement operation launched today is to do just that. A police officer undercover tries to cross the street. Any car that doesn't stop is quickly pulled over and issued a ticket with a $103 fine. And for those drivers who pass a car that has already stopped for a pedestrian, the ticket will cost you $270. Dozens of tickets were written today, and no doubt those recipients got the message.
We would like to make stopping for pedestrians in crosswalks as commonplace as drivers stopping for red lights at intersections.
Now, as you can see, I made it across the road safely, but some would argue this intersection would be a whole lot safer if there were a traffic light here. Well, the problem there is money. Traffic lights cost about $100,000 a piece, so the city is hoping this enforcement and awareness campaign can do the same job at a fraction of the cost. Reporting live in Santa Barbara, Tony, back to you.
Getting the message out. Thanks, Matt. Matt?
Tony, there isn't always smooth sailing on the Santa Barbara Channel, especially on days like today where there's strong winds and rough surf. The skies may have dried up this morning, but massive waves continued to hit the coast. On East Beach, several sailboats remained stuck in the sand, some helpless victims to the pounding waves, others admirably fought for by their owners.
We got a lot of water under the boat right now.
The strategy? Wrap a rope around the boat, send a surfer out with a line, and while crews back on land steady the craft, fasten the other end to the fishing boat and start the engines.
Go, go, go!
And hope the waves float the boat out to sea before the line breaks.
Well, we gotta re-rig the rope here. Hopefully we can make it in time.
And when the line does break, as it did several times, it's a race against the clock to get it reattached before the tide goes out.
It's a really strong boat.
But as the tide climbs higher,
That boat's gonna float now.
so do the hopes of David Burby, whose boat is just a few feet from the open sea. After a few quick tugs and a massive wave, finally.
Pop up, boy. We're out! Yeah! Did it! Woo!
After 2 days of pushing and pulling, Dave Burby's boat was finally floating once again.
2 days of hard work.
Awesome. Awesome. Real happy about it.
Dave Burby has good reason to be happy. The rough surf tossed 5 other boats onto the beach. All of them were completely destroyed. That's it in Santa Barbara. Back to you.
Matt.
Well, Tony, the same 12 jurors that found David Attias guilty of 4 counts of murder has now found him to be legally insane.
We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the defendant, David Attias, insane.
Convicted of second-degree murder, but found to be legally insane at the time, 20-year-old David Attias avoids what could have been a life sentence for driving down a crowded street near UCSB, running over 5 people, and killing 4 of them.
This was a horrible, horrible tragedy. There are no victors today. The losses that were incurred February 23rd are permanent. And we are very, very shaken. We continue to be very shaken and saddened for that. But we're grateful that, in our view, that tragedy was not compounded today by an unjust ruling.
David's father, a Hollywood director, took the stand earlier in the trial in his son's defense. He described David's lifetime struggle with mental illness. The prosecution never doubted that David is in fact mentally ill, but fought hard against the insanity defense, calling David a lonely, troubled young man who has problems making friends.
He was mad because the 9 girls rejected him and nobody would go out with him. The frat girls ditched him. And he was driving down the street after going damn, 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 and saw some happy people on the street and stepped on the gas and ran them over. That's what I think happened, that he was angry.
The father and mother of one of the victims was in the front row when the verdict was read. Outside the courtroom, Tony Bordakis lashed out at the legal system.
That you can twist the facts to your advantage and get away with murder. The tragedy of what happened can't be undone. In our opinion, David Attias will not serve the appropriate time for killing 4 young people and for horribly injuring a 5th.
David will now be evaluated by the county mental health director to determine what should happen next.
David will probably spend a large part of his life in a mental hospital, and that's an appropriate place for this case to end.
Now, once at the hospital, he could eventually be released. Now, that is if a doctor determines that he is no longer a threat to society. So the big news coming out of the courtroom in Santa Barbara today, David Attias found to be legally insane, and he will not go to jail. As you said, no survivors have been found yet. Of the 88 people on board, 4 bodies have been recovered. Now, the plane is thought to be just off the coast here in Oxnard in very deep water, perhaps as deep as 700 feet. The National Transportation Safety Board is here in Oxnard. The NTSB is investigating. Early focus of the investigation is on the horizontal stabilizer, which is on the tail end of the aircraft. Meanwhile, at sea, the Coast Guard continues to collect plane debris, all the while searching for any signs of survivors.
Oblivious to the grim assignment underway, dolphins play in the path of a search and rescue boat. From the air, the Coast Guard scours the waters off Anacapa Island, looking for survivors. Meanwhile, fishermen like Bob Perrin collect bits and pieces of the Alaskan Airlines plane.
We'll turn this into the rescue operations. They want as many pieces as possible.
Over 24 fishing boats like the one we're on rush to the crash site in a desperate search for survivors. While none have been found, the Coast Guard says boats like this have played a critical role in the search and recovery operation.
It was just an incredible response from both the private and commercial and military craft out there. It was really astounding.
Astounding, but no doubt frustrating for all those searching the sea, hoping beyond hope for a sign of life, finding only shreds of what is now left of Flight 261, while being constantly reminded of the 88 people on board.
It's starting to get sad, isn't it? This is a woman's shoe. Starting to feel more personal now that it's not plane parts. These things belong to people. Well, that shoe definitely came off of someone's foot when they hit.
Now, officially, the Coast Guard says they are still looking for survivors, but tomorrow it's expected that they will make the tough decision and say this is no longer a search and rescue operation, but a search and recovery. Back to you, Jennifer and Tony. The search for Andrea Crawford and Rachel Newhouse comes to a sudden and tragic end. After Rex Krebs confesses to kidnapping, raping, and killing both Andrea and Rachel, police find their bodies buried near his secluded San Luis Obispo cabin. While the search for the missing college co-eds is over, the search for answers has just begun. We started looking here in Sand Point, a small town in northern Idaho where Krebs was born and raised, where he had his first run-in with the law. Growing up in Sandpoint, Rex Krebs had a troubled home life. His aunt was murdered when he was just 4 years old. His uncle was also murdered when he was 6. As a boy, Rex ran away from home often, first getting into trouble by stealing cars.
We try to handle our own if we can, but this thing got out of hand.
Art Krebs says the news of his nephew in California has left the entire family in shock.
This was the most devastating day the whole family had. It was not an easy thing. We're just barely getting where we can even converse about it.
But others here in Sandpoint are talking about the last time Krebs was arrested.
I remember I was standing right up there.
This woman saw it happen. Still frightened by the decade-old memory, she asked us not to identify her. It was behind the movie theater on Main Street by Sandpoint Creek, where Krebs pushed her friend down a steep embankment and then attacked her.
She said she felt like she was going to pass out, and then he came down after her and raped her and then left her there.
The victim was just 12 years old. According to court documents obtained by Action News, Krebs sexually and physically assaulted the young girl.
She had like a big gash up here on her forehead, a hand mark on her neck, and her cheek was swollen.
Krebs, however, was only charged with a misdemeanor and sentenced to just 90 days in jail.
Sometimes that's the best you can do.
Sergeant Andy Anderson with the Sandpoint Police Department investigated the case. He says the victim did not want to testify, and a felony aggravated assault charge just wouldn't stick.
He's one of those that falls through the cracks in the system.
Art Krebs says letting his nephew off with just a slap on the wrist was a mistake.
I do blame the judicial system for it. I believe they let him go too quick on his other conviction.
In fact, few people in Sandpoint who know him are surprised to find out that Rex Krebs is once again behind bars, even his own mother. While distraught and uncomfortable about showing her face on camera, Connie Krebs freely admitted that she has little doubt her son is guilty.
They need to put him away and throw away the key. Period. My son.
Life in prison isn't the only punishment facing Connie's son. If convicted this time, Rex Krebs could receive the death sentence. Matt Cota, KSBY 6, Action News. As we landed on the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, we dropped into the middle of a simulated war.
You're here during the final battle problem, the 3-day exercise where we're involved in a scenario that would be similar to something that we would see whenever we deploy either to the Western Pacific or the Arabian Gulf.
Not only is the ship moving side to side, but sometimes it's pitching forward and back as well.
Pilot Scott Zalem says that one wrong move could end in disaster.
Especially at night. At night, you have very few reference sources, and you're trusting the people that you're talking to on the radio.
But you'd be surprised at how little talking there actually is. The noise on the flight deck would break your eardrums if not for this special equipment, especially with the plane going at 170 miles an hour. Instead, communication relies mostly on elaborate sign language, which guide the pilots and the rest of the crew. While the Navy pilots may get most of the glory, these F-14 and F-18 fighter jets would never make it off the flight deck without the support of thousands of sailors down below, like Casey Fritz in the arresting gear engine room.
A hydraulic brake, basically.
Casey never sees the jets take off or land. But he hears them while making sure the cables that catch the jets on the flight deck are working. And you can't forget sailors like Dwayne Smith, who doesn't get to fly an F-14. Make sure those that do never go hungry.
The challenge here is basically to make sure that everyone here gets a chance to eat. That's the challenge, because you never know who's going to come, what time they're going to come, and when the time is going to end. It just goes on and on.
In fact, on the USS Lincoln, everything goes on like it would in any city with a population of 5,500. There are barbers and store clerks, postal workers, and police officers. And like any crowded city, getting around can be difficult. Nearly 11,000 feet in length, the USS Abraham Lincoln has over 3,000 different compartments, and even the most experienced sailor can get lost from time to time. What also gets lost here on the Lincoln is sleep. The enlisted live in berthing areas with 50 other sailors.
Yeah, it's a different way of life, but you get used to it.
Another thing that takes some getting used to, keeping everything you own in a small locker under your bed.
It's pretty tight, but you kind of make do with what you have.
But the U.S. Navy has had to make do as well with declining enlistment numbers. Many more recruits are needed.
Drawdown in all the military services. We are short some people right now.
As a result, the average age on board, just 19 and a half. Teenagers responsible for keeping the Navy's most powerful planes and its largest aircraft carrier running smoothly.
Each and every one of them plays a vital role. They all play their part.
Well, Rick, Stephen Masto is the first firefighter to die in the line of duty in the 117-year history of the Santa Barbara City Fire Department. Today, he was remembered by friends and family and honored by firefighters from across the state. A solemn procession of fire trucks slowly moves through the streets of Santa Barbara, stranding passerbys in their tracks. Respect paid to a man they never knew. A young widow clutches the arm of her husband's brother, guiding her to a rose garden in the shade of the Santa Barbara Mission, where a coffin is lifted gently off a ladder truck, followed by the jacket of Santa Barbara City firefighter Stephen Joseph Masto. The Forest Service, fellow firefighters, police officers, and dignitaries joined the family and friends of Steve Masto today. They came to honor the man who died doing the job he loved.
He was enthusiasm personified.
He is absolutely one of the finest individuals I have ever had the pleasure to work with.
Steve's enormous smile was remembered fondly. Friends called him Swoop for the way he became the center of attention whenever he entered a room.
I don't know why Steve's life was cut so short. Steve is in a better place. And wherever that is, he is the life of the party.
It is a double blow for the Masto family. On Saturday, they learned their son had died fighting a wildland blaze in the rugged backcountry of Santa Barbara. Then, yesterday morning, Steve's grandfather also passed away. Faced with the death of his father and son, Dr. Daniel Masto delivered a stirring eulogy, remarking on Steve's love of life and those in his life.
Stephen loved you all. He loved his brother, he loved his sisters, he loved his mother. And he loved me.
Now, the county coroner has still not determined how Steve Masto died. We do know that he was found in some very rugged terrain in the mountains north of Santa Barbara. We do know that he was not burned. He did not suffer any blunt trauma. I mean, he wasn't hit by a rock, and there was no visible wounds. So while the funeral is finished for Steve Masto, the investigation into his death continues. Rick, back to you.
All right, thanks, Matt.
You'll find a wide variety of music at Santa Barbara's Farmers Market. Of course, plenty of fruits, vegetables, and fresh-cut flowers, and a fair share of, well, let's call them interesting characters. But perhaps most intriguing of all is the woman who helps you cross the street.
You made it.
Her name is Rosa, and on Tuesday, this is her turf. Don't try crossing it without her permission.
If you go when you're not supposed to, she lets you know about it.
Rosa uses a wide variety of hand signals,
Thank you.
along with plenty of loud noises to get your attention.
Have a gorgeous day. Enjoy yourself. Be happy.
And despite her firm stance against jaywalking, she's beloved by buyers and sellers alike.
Rosa's great. She's like a mother to me. She takes care of us here on the corner, and she takes care of all the people crossing.
And like a mother, after she helps you,
Have a gorgeous day. Thank you very much. You're your children.
always a kind word and a friendly hello.
Señora Farmers Market.
while the growers come and go as the produce changes with the seasons, you can count on Rosa to be here, directing traffic in her own unique way.
Bye, enjoy! Light! Yoo-hoo! Morning! Hello!
Nestled in the San Ynez Mountains, Rancho del Cielo is a quiet place where the President and First Lady could get away from the noise of Washington. But for the people of Santa Barbara, Reagan's visits were anything but quiet. Flying over the San Ynez Mountains in the presidential helicopter or on the streets in a motorcade, Reagan and his entourage of handlers and Secret Service men could never really go unnoticed.
Do a little riding, exercise some horses.
Mm-hmm.
You should have a change of pace.
Mm.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
While Rancho del Cielo gave the president a chance to get away from it all, at the same time, he brought the world to Santa Barbara.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Reagan.
The president often used his vacation home to hold political events, like this summit with Mexican leaders.
Santa Barbara is very much a part of the historic relationship between our two peoples.
But perhaps the most famous visit by one of President Reagan's guests was in 1983. That was when the Queen of England came to town. Visiting with the Reagans at their ranch, Her Majesty even contemplated a horseback ride. That is, until it rained. Instead, the Queen and the President visited one of the area's most popular tourist attractions, the Santa Barbara Mission. But throughout the 80s, the biggest attraction of all may well have been Reagan himself. Not only for the president's supporters who greeted him whenever Air Force One touched down, but also for protesters. An opportunity for many to get their message heard by the commander-in-chief.
You permit us to deliver our letters of concern, then, to be delivered to the president.
When ignored by the vacationing president, they were not by the press, a constant but often unwelcome holiday companion of the Reagans.
The presidential couple will not leave their mountaintop ranch for July 4th festivities.
Perhaps that's why when visiting Santa Barbara, the Reagans spent so much of their time here at Rancho del Cielo, a simple vacation home carved into the hillside that mirrored the personality of our 40th president, a man who, while leader of the free world, was just as comfortable in jeans as he was in a business suit, who had nothing but praise for the land he liked to call home.
Here in this magnificent ranch in the spectacular Santa Ynez Valley, we can remember our roots and feel the power and strength of our past.
Inspired by the artist today, it from the land. Inspired by its simple beauty, reminiscent of their home country, a small band of Danish immigrants dubbed the land Valley of the Sun. It was 1910. Men with names like Nordentoft, Gregerson, and Hornsild made peace with the Chumash Indians and built Solvang. Today, Solvang's rich history is kept alive in places like the Elverhøy Museum.
This was their living room.
Once the home and studio of Solvang artist Viggo Brandt Eriksson, it is a rare specimen of Danish-American history, kept alive by docents like Gerda Hansen.
When you stand here with greasy fingers, you can open this with your...
But much of Solvang's history, like this rusting tractor, cannot be preserved. A farming community for most of this century, agricultural land here has come and gone. In its place, tourism. The fact is, tourism has sustained the local economy for the last half-century, and every year seems to grow a little bit bigger. People from all over the world come to Solvang to see a little bit of Denmark right here on the central coast.
If the people who founded the town saw the traffic we have today, they would roll in their graves, you know. They would really rotate because it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Gerda, like most here, knows the importance of tourism, but worries that amidst all the Danish bakeries, windmills, and souvenir shops, the young people will forget their true heritage.
If we really try, and if the next generation try, we might still be sort of Danish, but it is disappearing a little bit. A little bit, it is disappearing.
It does reappear, however, from time to time, as Solvang's youngest residents sing songs from the old country. giving some here hope that the imprint left on Solvang by the original Danish settlers will never really go away. Matt Cota, KSBY 6, Action News.
Well, Tony, snow did close down Highway 154 behind me early this morning for a couple hours, but as you can see, traffic is running smoothly, and most of the snow has melted. However, when I got up this morning, looked out at the window, everything 1,500 feet and above, these coastal mountains had turned from green to white.
From the foothills of Santa Barbara to the snow-capped peaks of the Los Padres National Forest, a winter wonderland arrived early this morning.
It's amazing just to see all the snow here. I've never seen this kind of snow in Santa Barbara ever.
While the snow closed down Highway 154 for 2 hours, once opened, a flood of excited Santa Barbarans arrived to get a close-up look and even a taste of the white stuff.
The snow isn't yellow, so I could eat it?
If you want. Spontaneous snowball fights seem to appear out of nowhere.
Oh, I got him!
Snowmen multiplied rapidly, while on the steeper slopes, the more daring tried sliding without a sled. Among those frolicking in the fresh fallen snow, kids big and small, some that clearly should have been at school, others that would normally be at work.
I want to play in the snow some more.
Because it does bring out the kid in everybody.
And for those that couldn't share in the fun, well, hopefully they had a friend with a bucket, a shovel, or a pickup truck to bring some snow back to greener pastures. And as they left, over the snow-covered hills hovered a rainbow, or more appropriately on this day, a snowbow.
Rainbow, snowbow, well, you get the picture. Now, Caltrans crews were working in the pre-dawn hours to clear 154, so it wasn't that big of a problem for commuters early this morning. What bigger headache was for the California Highway Patrol, because all those people, all those cars were headed up over the pass just so they could play in the snow. Tony, back to you.
I like snowball, Matt. Action News reporter Matt Cota is live to tell us why. Matt.
Well, Tony, when it comes to art, you certainly can't please everyone, and this latest exhibit on Santa Barbara State Street proves that. It's creating quite a stir. On Santa Barbara's busiest street, passerbys are stopping in their tracks, and many are scratching their heads.
What is it?
They're trying to figure out just what the heck they're looking at.
I think it looks like a rock. It looks like a boulder.
I think it's a lump of clay that somebody didn't know what to do with.
Well, actually, it's the latest installment of the State-of-the-Art Gallery, a collection of 8 sculptures scattered along Santa Barbara State Street as a way to encourage economic development. But so far, it's encouraged mostly criticism.
I don't consider it art. It's not attractive to me or interesting or appealing.
How graphic can we get? It's that bad.
Mr. Ken, a Santa Barbara host, is used to answering questions asked by tourists, but not lately.
They're not asking, they're talking. And they're not talking about quality, they're talking about scatology.
Scatology. Look it up in the dictionary if you haven't already figured out what people are calling these large brown sculptures underneath their breath.
I haven't heard one person that actually said they liked it. The rest of them have said Santa Barbara is a laughingstock.
Actually, I think it's pretty beautiful.
If you look a little harder, there are those out there that appreciate the installment, including Bob Dykes, who helped bring the exhibit to Santa Barbara.
These are probably a little more challenging than most sculptures, but they're very insightful.
For instance, this piece.
Maybe a man. I don't know.
It has to be a love
It looks
affair.
like maybe a man. And
Well, yeah. William Tucker, an artist from England, had in mind a man's torso when he sculpted this.
I'm an English woman, and if that's art, my fellow countrymen's way out of line, I would say.
While Tucker's sculptures are on loan, shipping and insurance will still cost the city around $75,000.
I am really glad that Santa Barbara is using its money in such a productive way. I'm really glad.
For all those sidewalk critics that disapprove, cheer up. It's only a temporary exhibit. In November, the sculptures will be gone.
Thank heavens it's only going to be here till November.
And Santa Barbarans will be able to tell the artist what they think of his sculptures face to face. William Tucker is coming to Santa Barbara tomorrow for an official unveiling ceremony. For now, back to you in the studio. Tony.
And that should be interesting. All right, Matt.
Just arrived here on the scene. If you can take a look right behind my shoulder, there it is, Stearns Wharf, the trademark of Santa Barbara, in flames.
Matt.
Well, Jennifer, after his first trial ended in a hung jury, Graham Presley was released to his family. But this past month, He was retried for the murder of Nick Markowitz, and this time around, the jury was unanimous. The verdict, guilty of second-degree murder. Tony, we're here at Dwight Murphy Park, just a few hundred yards from Santa Barbara's East Beach. It's a popular park where you can usually find kids playing on the soccer fields or on the jungle gym. But according to police detectives, it's also popular among men trying to solicit sex.
Matt.
Jennifer, the incident allegedly occurred here in downtown Santa Barbara at the Paseo Nuevo Mall, where the suspect worked as a security guard for nearly 2 years.
Matt?
Tony, just now, city firefighters retrieved a suspicious package which was sent to a state of California office building this afternoon. It is now in the hands of an FBI special agent in charge of weapons of mass destruction.
Action News reporter Matt Cota is live with more. Matt?
Tony, when it comes to sand, Santa Barbara certainly has plenty of it, especially here on East Beach, where all the sand dredged from the Santa Barbara Channel is dumped. But now all this and more could go to help a neighbor in need. The noise on the flight deck would break your eardrums if not for this special equipment, especially with the plane going at 170 miles an hour. After nearly a week of rain, these creek beds are like a wet sponge that just can't soak up any more water. As a result, a lot of debris is going with that water downstream.
Matt.
Wendy, today, Cottage Health Systems, that's the owner of Cottage Hospital here in Santa Barbara, announced that they are purchasing crosstown rival St. Francis Medical Center and shutting that facility down.
Matt, what's going on?
Tony, we're here at the mouth of Mission Creek where it empties out into the ocean here in Santa Barbara. As you can see, the trash and other debris has been cleaned up in anticipation of the weekend storm, but health experts worry about another type of pollution, about the type of pollution in the water that you can't see, bacteria and other toxins that can cause some serious health problems. Storms, preparation, of course, will help, but here's the bigger problem. Watch this. This whole area was covered with water. Now this ground, completely saturated. If we get more rain, it's going to be like rain hitting a sponge that just can't soak up anymore. That's going to cause a big problem downstream. It's going to cause a big problem for all the homes in the floodplain, and it certainly has a lot of people here anxiously looking toward the sky. Tom?
Matt, that's the worry in a lot of towns tonight. Let me ask you, Governor